nature to the base where you have kind of dirt and foliage and the mushrooms all over here, and then we have the jagged rocks and cliff face going on over here. So that's what we'll do. Carve this corner down a little bit here. Okay, so we've settled on our idea for the base, and we have our kind of our shape built here. Now we have to think about the next step, which will be to add our sculpt-a-mold to this kind of dirt area here. So I'm going to introduce you guys to that material. Just gonna think about this for a minute here. You know what, let me see if we have what we need as far as like the sculpted elements go, because ideally we could do the sculpt the mold up here, but under here, if I want to add things like skulls and bones and stuff like that, you want to have those made and even painted already, and then you can kind of incorporate them into the material as you're applying it. So we might just do the sculpt the mold up here and then have to sculpt those props before we do it down here. And then the rock face will sculpt using a combination of Cos clay and epoxy clay, because we can't just add clay to this and bake it because it's on foam now, okay? But what we can do is we can take Cos clay and we can sculpt rock formations using a rock and bake them, and then stick them on here, and then use epoxy clay to kind of blend them all in. So okay. All right, let's look through my bin of items. See what we have to work with. Actually, do have some. So I do have some skulls. I do indeed. Couple little tooth bones. This is what I have. These two here. But I'm not sure. They don't really fit, I think. You know. No, so let's, you know what, let's stick to doing just the sculpt and mold. We'll we'll do just the sculpt the mold on this part right here. And then I'll show you guys how I'm going to sculpt the rock formations with Cos clay. And then that should probably be it. But then at least you see the sculpt the mold step, and you'll see how we're going to approach the rocks. Animal skull, yeah, animal skull, and some like leg bones and stuff like that we're going to make. I'm just trying to think of what I need to show you guys here so we can, because the idea is we need to be to the point where the sculpt the mold is dry for next week, so I can show you guys how to really finish this in the next class. Okay, let's do this. Let's do this step here. I'm gonna need a few things. So we're done with the foam. So ideally what you would do is you would have any sort of prop or accessories that you want in the dirt done, like the bones and all that stuff, before we do this step. I'm gonna do this step just on the surface, and then the step under here where the bones will be, I'm gonna do that just in between as homework, because I don't have the bones made and we just don't have time to make them right now. But it's essentially, it's the same process. I'm just gonna be sticking the bones into the material. But yeah, let's get this sculpt the mold step ready. Now this material is really cool. When I discovered it, it was like, oh man, this is the stuff right here. It's called, right here, it's called Sculpt the Mold. Comes in a white package like this. And I discovered it because I always wonder, I was always trying to figure out ways to make bases look more like real, more like actual nature, and to make dirt look just like actual dirt. And I looked at what model train guys use, the ones that make those really elaborate, huge model train sets, and they use this stuff on top of foam to create the dirt. And what it is it's paper pulp mixed with a plaster. So we add it to a tin and we add water to it. It creates like a mushy sculptable medium, and we're just gonna kind of spread it on like frosting. Let's see. Before we do that, I'm probably gonna paint Vaseline onto the bottom of the shoes and the staff, and just so when this material is attaching itself to it doesn't stick to the character, because we want the character to be removable. So let me get that out too. Again, that wouldn't be the issue if the character was painted already. We wouldn't have to worry about that, because we can just permanently attach it. Every project's a little different. I got the petroleum jelly. I use these loaf pans. You can get these loaf pans at like the dollar store with the non-stick in there. I use these to mix sculpt the mold. So you need a loaf pan. To sculpt the mold, we need water, which I have to go get, I think. And one thing I do that I haven't really seen other people do is I'm gonna actually mix, this is orange, like a bright orange and black in with the water, and it's gonna tint the sculpt the mold like a dark brown color. So that way, because this can be a big pain in the butt to paint it brown after it's been hardened. So I just mix the painting pigments in with the sculpt the mold, and it gives you a nice base color to start. So, okay, let me go grab the water, and I think I need to grab black paint, and then we'll start. I'll be right back. All right, I think I got everything. We'll see. It's like paper mache clay. It's different. So paper pulp is more of like if you took toilet paper and you shredded it up finely, that's paper pulp. And the whatchamacallit, the plaster is mixed in with that. I mean, I guess it's kind of right. If the character was finished being painted, would you have done a steel stick before the foam? You could. It's not really necessary. I would have just glued it into the I would have glued it into the piece of wood is what I would have done with a epoxy glue, like a 5-minute epoxy. There you go, Crunchy. Careful. I'll sneak up on you. Alright, so first step is we're going to petroleum jelly the parts of the sculpture that we don't want to stick. Why orange and black and not brown? Because you're mixing it into something that is white, and I just find these are really strong colors, so they are able to overpower the white. Brown is already a mixed color, so it just tends to muddle. It just tends to not get as dark. The brown mixes with the white and becomes like just like a light skin tone, you know. So I just find this is actually a fluorescent orange, so really strong orange, and then of course black is just strong in itself. And I don't use my expensive Reaper paints for this step. I buy like cheaper stuff, like that's folk art, because you're gonna use a lot of it. So, okay, let me get a paintbrush. There we go. And we're going to remove the character. There's a lot of ways to make a non-stick surface here, but there you go. We are going to just paint the bottoms with petroleum jelly, and that will prevent any sticking here. Because we want it to be like a snug fit. You know, we want it to be fitted right up in there. So we want it to go right up to the bottom of the shoe. And we can go in, we'll go in and remove the petroleum jelly once it's all set. Bottom of the staff here. Should be good. Let's actually get him in his position. I was worried about being a hard part is lining it up. Let's see if we got some foam getting in the way here. There we go. No, that's not right. Ah, there we go. Ah. Aha. It's this. There. When you paint the base, will you use Reaper paints? For some things. You don't have to. It's such a large canvas that it's better to use like a, you know, more inexpensive paint for that part. Plus, it's not like you're doing any crazy texturing or shading or anything like that, so. Okay, so I got some tongue depressors. We got our sculpt the mold here. We're gonna put some of it in here. I'm gonna mix up our first batch here. I want to try to not disturb it as much so it doesn't get too airborne. There we go. That should be enough. Now I do our orange paint here. Just gonna, more than you think you need. Okay. A little bit of black. Uh-oh. This might be out. Oh, there we go. There we go. Perfect. Yum. Bon appetit. Okay, then we're gonna add water. Now you want to add water, but you don't want to add too much water, but you don't want to add too little water. So it's kind of like you just kind of add some, mix it up. Decide if you need to add more, and you can mix it to whatever consistency you want, but you want it to be properly hydrated, but you also want it to still be kind of sculptable and not just like, you know, too mushy. So we're just gonna have a nice mix here. Got a nice proper mixing stick. I would say the nice thing too about mixing the color, mixing it instead of just using brown is you'll end up getting a lot of variety. You know, like some parts will have a little bit more of the black and other parts will have a little bit more of the orange, and it just creates, you know, that's the thing I noticed the most about nature is it's so like diverse. Even the shades of brown on the ground, there's just so much going on, you know, so much variety in one little slice of it, you know. So we're trying to mimic that variety. Now, when you get to this step on your project, make sure you realize that when you start this step, it's gonna have to sit for like a whole week to dry. Depending on how thick you go. If you go thicker, it needs even longer. Yeah. It can take a while. It'll be dry to the touch probably in a day or two, but for it to be thoroughly dried all the way through, it can take some time. So you want to give yourself definitely time You want to make sure you're at a point where you can stop working on the piece for a little while. And you can see we got a very convincing looking dirt here. Muddy dirt. I'm gonna give it a nice thorough mix, make sure there's no hidden chunks in there. The consistency is good. This is kind of what we're looking for. Okay. Now. This is where I'm going to want to bring out some... Oh yeah, I'm going to introduce you guys to a few things I like to do in this step. I couldn't find my bigger rock, so we're not going to do it. Usually I have big, like, kind of like bigger sized pebbles, really fine pebbles, sand, and this stuff, which is called Spanish moss. Spanish moss, which looks very much like small tree roots. Looks like a lot of things. Really nice material. Then we have some of these like finer gravel here. A little bag of sand there. And usually I have pebbles a little bit bigger than that, but we don't have those right now. That's okay. Not 100% necessary. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a scoop here. We're just gonna kind of get it on there. Oh, there's some unmixed. There we go. We're just gonna use this and we're gonna spread it around. Be very careful when you get to the feet. And we're creating our ground here. What I'm probably gonna do is we're gonna fill it in around the character, and then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna lift the character slightly up, kind of pack it in under there, and then stick him down so the material will mushroom out around the shoes and stuff. That'll give us that nice form fit. Another thing here, because we're planning on having these little mushrooms in here, you can add those now if you want to, or you can, what we'll do is we'll wait for the material to harden up, and then we'll drill holes and kind of glue those in place, which I like that method better because you just know they're on there and they're not going to move around. Sometimes when you just stick things into this material, they'll kind of pop out later and you have to glue them anyways. Let's lift him up. You know, let's just set him down to the side here. Make this a little easier on ourselves. Keep the holes clear. Sculpt a mold. Sculpt a mold. That's what it's called. You can buy it or you can make it. Like I said, it's not a difficult material to make yourself if you have to. Or you can just buy it like I do. I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna pull this way, and it's gonna create this nice kind of like overlapping edge here. Like those classic floating island cartoon edge. Oh. And this material, once it hardens, is very, very hard, really durable. That's where our base gets its structure. Just get the rest of that on there. Oops. Okay. Now, let's get this. Hey, welcome raiders. In the middle of a base sculpting class, come on in. Okay, let's see if we can get this in its position here. Yeah. Like, see, we need a little bit right here. So we can pull this away. Gonna push it in there carefully. So that looks pretty good. And you don't want to mess with them. You want to leave them in there till it hardens up, and then get them out. Hey, thank you. Thank you for the kind words. We'll see you again. Now, this ground here, this is just the dirt. It's going to be covered with, oh yeah, let's do the next step. So, I always like to add like these little kind kind of tree roots along the ground, you know. So we're just going to take this, and we're just going to kind of push them into the Sculptamold here. Just going to add another kind of layer of texture. Can you push in fake moss? You can push in all kinds of different materials. Yeah, rocks, sand. Just imagine you're doing everything that's under the foliage. So everything that's under the grass, everything that's under the... you're making the dirt layer of your project. You know, so there's going to be... This is just... You know, we work in a layered method, so after this hardens, we're going to glue on more things and just build up more diversity, more layers. And it's just, you can create a really nice environment. You know, really a realistic looking slice of your universe. Again, this stuff is called Spanish moss. If anyone's wondering, one of my favorite, very useful mixed media additions, especially for scenic bases. Spanish, yeah, very fancy. Fanciest of mosses. Okay, so now I have some of this gravel. I'm gonna add a little bit more of the gravel towards the cliff face. So fine gravel. You know, you would add more rocks and gravel towards the cliff edge because that's where the rocky terrain is, and then a little bit less as we get here. So I'm just gonna kind of sprinkle these around right here. What kind of gravel? Any kind of gravel. You can go outside, you can scoop up a bunch of rocks, wash them off, you know, use stuff that you find. You can buy stuff. This one's, I think, a woodland scenic stuff. Make the best of what you have. Yeah, there's so much to explore when it comes to this mixed media approach. I think you can find a lot of your own materials for this stuff. You just gotta learn how to process it in a way that, you know, you don't have any living entities in your artwork. You know, using vinegar and heat to purify anything that you're using from the outdoors. Okay, and I'm just gonna push that down into the material. What you can also do too is you can get like a really watery glue and essentially mist or spray it on there once the Sculptamold's dried. But I'm just gonna tamp it down. How do you use vinegar and heat? Well, vinegar kills living critters. So if it's something that can't be heated, you would give it a vinegar bath and then dry it out. And if it's something that can be heated, like rocks or pieces of wood or sticks, then you bake it, you cook it in the oven. Just kills off any living critters. So you're not like creating a infestation in your home by trying to make an art project. Don't put bark. Yeah, put it in the, bake it in the oven. Yeah, oven is fine. And now I'm gonna add little patches of some sand, some sandiness. This will create a little bit of a kind of color diversity. There's little bits of rock in the sand here. Couple little spots, little patches here, and then again towards the cliff face, it's gonna get more intense. Now, notice how bright this stuff is. We're gonna tone that down because there's another step later, once this is all dry, where we're gonna go back over all this with washes and add even more color diversity. Okay, and let's give it another tap here. Right, so the Sculptamold's like your binding agent that just brings all these elements together, right? It has its own texture and color, and there we go. That's ready to let it dry. I'll basically, on this underside here, I'll basically do the same thing, but I'm gonna use the tool and I'm gonna create more textured. So it doesn't look flat like this, it's gonna look like how the cliff edge would look, you know, or how the side profile of the dirt would look. And then I will insert objects that I've sculpted, like skulls, you know, like bones and skulls and pieces of wood and stuff like that into the material. But you'll paint the objects first and then you insert them, because then you just don't have to paint them, you know. So and then this side here is going to be sculpted with this stuff. It's called Magic Sculpt. It's a 2-part epoxy clay, so it doesn't have to be baked. And it's going to be the same idea, where we're going to use this as a binding agent to bring together all the rock formation parts we're going to make, which is what we're going to do next. Let's see. I'm going to show you, okay, I'm going to show you guys how, I'm going to show you really simple, easy trick to making really nice looking rock formation. You guys ready? And you're going to make parts. You're going to make the parts for the rock formation. You're going to bake them separately in the oven. And then you're going to add Magic Sculpt, stick in your parts, and then match up the textures using the same method I'm about to show you. So that's how we're gonna do that. So, oops. All right, I got a piece of wood here. Let's grab some clay. So you're gonna look at some reference to like look at some cliff faces, but you know, I can imagine that there's some rocks kind of protruding upwards here, and then it's just a rock face going down there. You could sculpt the whole thing with epoxy clay. I just prefer to sculpt with Cos clay. It's just a nice, epoxy clay is not very nice to sculpt with, which let me show you. This is the mixture here. You take one part of this and one part of this, equal as you can. It doesn't have to be perfect. You mix it together in your hands, usually wearing gloves, and you stick it on there and you can sculpt it. Now you have about an hour to work with it before it starts to harden, okay? So, and when it hardens, it's hard as a rock. So really solid stuff. So that we're gonna use that just like we used the Sculpt-A-Mold here on this section, and we're gonna stick in these like rock parts that we make out of Cos clay, you know. And the way you're gonna texture all of this rock face is you're going to use a rock. Okay? Let me just show you kind of what that looks like. So you can make some parts like this with like a flat back that you just kind of push on these cliff faces here. But essentially, you're gonna find some nice rocks outside. Usually ones that have like a nice edge like this are really good. And we're gonna get some of that rock texture on there, just like this. You use the rock as a sculpting tool, and you're gonna look at reference to kind of see how rock formations look. Usually they're very angular, you know, they got a lot of like flat planes and stuff. And you know, sometimes they have these little like undercut spots like this. It's really hard to go wrong here with the using a rock to sculpt rocks method. And then once you got your part textured, you take, let's see here, go in with let's see, where's it at? I need a particular tool. Oh, there. You go in with your line tool here, and you can add like little separation lines, and you know, little gashes in the stone, just like with armor. And you even add little kind of cracks. See that? Stay really loose with this. Doesn't have to be super perfect or anything. Once it's all painted up, it's gonna look really nice. And you'll create your rock face using the Cos clay pieces, and then in all the in-between areas, the Sculpt-A-Mold, you'll just texture and do the same methods. So, and I'll sculpt this whole, I'll bake these parts and then have a bunch of these parts already made. Then I'll do probably half at a time. So I'll mix up enough material to do this half, really sculpt it so it gives you time, and then sculpt this other half and push these pieces in place. This underbelly area, all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make my bones and tree roots, and I'm just gonna push the Sculpt-A-Mold in there and then stick those parts under there and texture it, and add more of the Spanish moss. And that is the point that we want to be at for next week. So all that work needs to be done and hardened. And next week we're going to get into the next phase, which will be painting and gluing and adding foliage and all that fun stuff. So we're gonna add in our mushrooms. We're gonna glue on. Let me show you. So this is one thing to get in the habit of collecting, but I have bins and bins full of. Will I be working on this on in stream too? I'm not sure. I can't say for sure. I will need to get that done, and I will probably need to get it done earlier in the week because, like I said, it needs time to dry. So possibly. Or I have to put in some midnight oil time. So, but I have let me show you here. We got bins and bins and bins full of. Here's the Spanish moss I have. See, Spanish moss. I bought this at a thrift store for $2. That's how I discovered Spanish moss. And then you just get like a bunch of fake plants that people like to decorate their houses with. When you shop for stuff like this, you want to look for stuff that's small. You know, that the leaf pattern and all that stuff is really small. Because again, we're trying to simulate nature. Nature has a lot of plant diversity. This stuff, if you buy it brand new, it's super expensive. But if you buy it, if you can find it used, like this little bushel here, is only $2. So these are the treasures you find hidden in plain sight. So not from China. Yeah, well, find it however you can, but I'm always on the hunt for this kind of stuff. As you can see, there's all kinds of different varieties. Here's a different kind of Spanish moss, $1.89. So, there's this kind of stuff right here. Now we're going to use this as a building material. We're not just gluing this stuff on there. We're cutting it into little pieces, sometimes combining things together, sometimes adding this and painting on top of it. You know, there's all kinds of. This is like the basic building material for making our foliage. And then there's also our ground cover, which this is my my bin of mixed media. So like this kind of stuff is pretty cool. And then you got the static grass. This stuff right here, this blended turf is really nice. This is like a lichen stuff, dark green lichen. So lots of variety. So start collecting. If you can get that like some sort of like turf material, I'm pretty sure it's like sponge that's been blended up, like green sponge that's been blended up. We'll use that as a base layer where we want the plant material to be, because we want the dirt to be exposed in some areas. We want plants to be growing in other areas. And then of course we're gonna have our mushrooms that we're gonna stick in there too. So and we're gonna just use all this stuff. We're gonna drill into this and glue, and should be nice. That's what we'll need for next time. So okay, that's gonna be it for the learning portion of the class today. Now let's get into your guys' work and see what you all have been up to. See how nice see how contrasty that's already looking, just with this mixed media compared